Jules here from Naturally Adrift Photo Adventures. Welcome back. A few years ago, I came across a news article about bald eagles roosting in the trees around Onondaga Lake. And the interesting thing was that there was like 50 of them, which is a large number considering throughout my lifetime I'd only seen a few in zoos behind bars with broken wings. So, of course, my husband and I had to investigate, and we went down and explored the creek walk next to the area near the mall and where the pictures of the trees had been with them roosting, and it was true. The article went on to tell about how they had been working on cleaning up the lake, and that the eagles were coming in to be able to fish because of some of the industries there and the water treatment plant. There was an area that was warm, and it kept a portion of the lake open so that it would enable the eagles to fish. And they were coming from all over New York State to be able to fish there. So this year I decided to make a project where I would go out to the lake, well, with my family, and try to photograph and film the eagles out there and all of the other wildlife that I could find. One thing I didn't realize, though, was that Onondaga Lake is actually the most polluted lake in all of the United States of America. I had not realized that. I mean, there's polluted lakes everywhere, but to have the most polluted lake in America in your backyard, that's kind of scary. Since I was going to be doing this project about the eagles in Onondaga Lake, I figured I should do some research and learn more about Onondaga Lake. And that's what led me to discovering it being the most polluted lake in America. And it's even one of the most polluted in the world. So Onondaga Lake was the home to the Native American tribe of Onondagas, the Onondaga Nation, and eventually white man moved in, and then came the tourists attracted by its beaches, and I imagine back then the lake was pristine and clean. And when the tourists started coming, resorts were built. Then after the resorts came the amusement parks, because we've got to keep people coming. And after a while, there came the Industrial Revolution. And during that time, many industries were built along the sides of Onondaga Lake. And beginning around, it says 1880, I believe, the lake started being polluted. The industries were just dumping all their waste into the lake. What was being dumped into the lake? Well, here's a list of some of the things that I found. One of the biggest and worst: mercury, ammonia, PCBs, residue from salt processing, and even sewage. Runoff containing fertilizer and pesticides, and even ice melt, all flow through watersheds into Onondaga Lake. And this occurred for over 100 years, making Onondaga Lake the most polluted lake in America. So for over 100 years, this lake was being polluted with all these horrible chemicals. And that, in the 1970s, was when America woke up and decided to do something about it, to stop, put, to put an end to the pollution. My husband and I were born in the 1970s, and all the while growing up, we'd hear slogans like give a hoot, don't pollute, and there was a lot of education on recycling and its importance. And I think a lot of that has to go along with the discoveries made about the pollutants that were being cleaned up at that point in time. Our son noted one day while we were working on this project, it's like, they're just birds, it's just eagles, it's not a big deal. And my husband turned to him and he said, "You don't get it, bud. When your mom and I were growing up, there were no eagles. You never saw them out in the wild. Once in a while you might see an eagle in the news or in a picture of a magazine, but you just never saw them." And then I piped up and said that I had seen one in a zoo, and it had a broken wing. That was only one in decades. And here this creature was supposed to be our national bird. Well, the bald eagle, was declared our national bird in 1782 by our founding fathers. So why is it that my husband and I never got to see eagles growing up? Well, the answer is simple: pollution. They eat fish. That's their primary source of food for the bald eagles, is fish. And what happens when the fish have their homes inundated with pollution and mercury? Well, their bodies get filled with mercury, and the eagles come down and they eat those mercury-laden fish, and they died. They were almost extinct, these bald eagles. Kind of think of it, kind of almost brings tears to your eyes. A symbol of America, nearly extinct. And I am thankful to those who decided to take matters into their own hands and begin cleaning up the lake, to stop polluting, to encourage recycling. Although the plan is not perfect, it's a step forward. And a huge thank you to those behind the conservation efforts to bring back the bald eagle, and to be able to not have to wait a whole nother 100 years to be able to see these amazing creatures. They are truly a wonder. It has been nearly 50 years since they began to clean up the lake, and those efforts still continue today, and will probably need to continue over the course of another 50, 60, 70 years. There are signs saying no swimming around the lake and do not eat the fish. They still contain some mercury, so it's not good for you to eat. And so far, the eagles do seem healthy, and we want to keep the pollution levels going down. So these efforts need to continue. Our first outing to the lake showed other signs of pollution too. My son was like, Mama, we forgot our bags. Should have brought a bag to clean up this lake." And over the other side of the rocks. I was looking, and there was all sorts of debris that had been pushed up from when the lake had been rough over from the night before. And there was natural materials there. There was reeds and tree branches and things like that. But amongst that were candy wrappers, cups, bits of plastic, even a toothbrush. I mean, it was the amount of was gross. It was disgusting. All because people can't practice, what you bring, you take back with you. Leave no trace. Um, and there's places to put your trash. Um, it just happens all the time. My son, he wanted to clean up the lake, and he took like sticks and was trying to drag stuff out. And I eventually had to tell him, "Hey, bud, you can't do that here today because it's slippery and you're gonna fall in." Definitely don't want him falling in those waters. No way. Um, yeah, but he's got a good heart, that boy. He helps me clean up um, the pollution around our apartment complex. Each spring we go out and we pick up trash. We put on our gloves and take bags out and pick up all the trash around the complex. And we do that when we go camping too. As you can imagine, a large group of eagles in a city can really draw a crowd. And every weekend we went out, there was other photographers there, other sightseers and birders. So a lot of the audio I had to cut out because there was people talking. But there was a camaraderie. Everybody was nice and talking about the different photos that they were taking. There was compliments. There was discussion about the lake's pollution. People would point out where eagles were coming from and their locations, how best to see them, best times of day, best places to look for them. All sorts of great conversations that were helpful to everyone. They're a really, really good group. I've come to find that a lot of times it's the same people that come every weekend or certain days of the week. They come to see and enjoy the eagles the same as we were doing. They bring a lot of joy to us. And there were other birds there too. Saw previously there was cormorants fishing. There's some mute swans in the area. Um, common mergansers winter on the lake. And I believe there was some red-headed ducks there too. They're kind of far out. This winter was really mild, so that they didn't freeze in. And when it did freeze, they were still a little far out. The ducks didn't want to come closer to the shore. And a little 400 millimeter can only reach out so far. But they were a good group of people, and I believe my son was the only young, and at least that I saw along the creek walk. There was a few others that were walking over by the pedestrian bridge area. And my son is very friendly, and he'd strike up a conversation with anybody who he could get to listen. I often was like, just let me know if he's bothering you, okay? But they're like, oh no, he's fine. It really helped to make the time pass for him, because sometimes we would be out there for 2 and 3 hours. We'd pack our hot cocoa and we'd leave that in the car and then go back to the car and warm up and then head back out sometimes. Make sure I had our snow pants and gloves and all that gear to be able to stay warm, because winters here in New York can be brutally cold. And this year it was brutally cold, but we just didn't have as much snow or ice as in years previous. And then there would be days where it would be 40 degrees. It's kind of a crazy winter. And here it's almost spring, and it's right now as I'm recording, there's a big snowstorm outside. Go figure. But I would really like to say thank you to all those other photographers and say that I've really enjoyed seeing your photos that you post on the Facebook group, Bald Eagles of Onondaga Lake. A really awesome bunch of people, and I thank you for tolerating us, and hopefully we'll be back again next winter.
Hey Mama, how do you turn an eagle into a beagle?
I don't know.
You've got a B in the front.
Beagle. Hey, I noticed that not all of those eagles' heads are white. Are some of those actually hawks?
No, an eagle's head doesn't turn white until they're 5 years old. Hey Mama, did you know eagles can live up to 30 years?
And did you know that the female eagle is bigger than the male?
Really?
Mm-hmm. How fast can they fly?
30 miles per hour. And up to 100 when they dive.
100 miles per hour when they dive? That's almost as fast as the peregrine falcon, who dives at 120 miles per hour. Cool. You're pretty smart. We also observed a variety of ducks wintering on Onondaga Lake. Obviously, mallards are present. We saw huge rafts of common mergansers, red-headed ducks, and a few hooded mergansers. We also sighted a few godwalls and widgeons. Most of the ducks stayed pretty far out away from the shore. Occasionally a great blue heron would fly by. Cormorants seemed plentiful. A few mute swans live on the lake. Sparrows and starlings could be seen in the trees. There were a few old coots out on the waters, and of course the Canada goose was present too. It was the bald eagles that seemed to really steal the show, though. They were so fun to watch. The eagles seemed to prefer stealing fish from each other versus actually hunting themselves. They always seemed to have beggars at their table, too. Other eagles, crows, and gulls often lay in wait, begging for a morsel of fish. One of the other photographers visiting the lake witnessed the eagles stealing fish from the mouths of the ducks. Clever little opportunists they are. Here, another photographer pointed out that under this tree, crows often lay in wait for the eagles to drop bits of fish from the tree above. And as shortly after he mentioned it, watch closely and you'll see. This eagle was filmed from the pedestrian bridge, which runs along the lake and then turns and goes up and over the train tracks. My son had a lot of fun observing the trains going back and forth, and the wildlife didn't seem to mind the trains as they kept coming and going. I really enjoyed filming and photographing the eagles from this bridge. It gets you a little closer and up higher to be able to see them in the trees. And when they fly, sometimes you can catch them right at eye level, which is really neat. Instead of always looking up from below them, you can observe them as they're flying up from the lake towards you. Ah, nature at its greatest, right? Wildlife are unpredictable. You just never know exactly what they're going to do when. However, when an eagle or most birds unload, that means they are probably most likely soon going to take off and fly. This eagle caught a really large fish, and it must have been pretty heavy too, because it seemed to be struggling as it soared up into the air with it. And once he got up as high as he could go, the fish slipped from his grasp. That or he let it go because it was so heavy and he perhaps was getting a bit tired. Now, he did, by the looks of things, he did try to go back after it, but he wasn't fast enough to catch that falling fish. But don't worry, I'm pretty sure that fish didn't go to waste, because there's always crows or gulls or other creatures lurking around in hopes for a tasty morsel. I wonder what this juvenile and adult eagle are thinking. I see them looking up here, and I think at that point there was a big metal bird flying over the top of everybody. That might be what they were looking at. But then, at one point, it looked like they were talking to each other, possibly even scolding the other. I wonder what the confrontation was over. Perhaps it was one wanted to sit on the favorite branch, and the other was like, no, I'm not moving. It's hard to know what goes through their minds. It could be fun to use your imagination to try to figure out what they were possibly thinking. The eagle that has just a partially white head and still a little bit of black there along the edges is probably about 4 years of age, just in case you're wondering. Something else that we observed was that the pedestrian bridge is on the western side of the lake, and so if you want to catch good light on your animals in the late afternoon, evening is the best time to photograph from the pedestrian bridge. And in the morning, it would be, lighting wise, it would probably be better to photograph from the creek walk. This great blue heron was photographed in the evening from the pedestrian bridge, and you can tell by the beautiful golden light that's falling on it. Getting ready to go on another trip out to Onondaga Lake, see what wildlife we can find. Go watch some more eagle action.
Hallelujah!
Yeah, don't forget to grab the snow pants out because it's going to be cold.
Okay.
Oh. Time to make the hot cocoa. And I gotta grab a tea bag for Dad. Oh wait, I gave him hot cocoa, it looks like. Oops, I put it in the wrong cup. Well, he won't mind. And I gotta get more water for kiddo. You ready to catch some eagles today?
Sure.
help but wonder after observing these eagles, if they don't come together as family groups. It almost seemed as if you'd see like a pair of adults and then there was all these juveniles and subadults all gathered together. I wondered, are they all strangers or could that be the parents and then like the first hatch or the 4-year-olds and then their 3-year-olds and then their, this year's babies still with them. If they kind of reunite in the winter and hang out. I don't know if anyone has ever tracked that scientifically or not. I'm no expert, that's for sure. But what I did read was that when the eagles hatch, they fledge at about 3 months of age, and then they hang out with their parents for a couple of more months. So the way things read, it sounded like by the time they're 6 months old, the eagles are on their own. So I don't know. Just after what I observed, kind of makes me wonder if anybody knows. Let us know in the comments. read, Onondaga Lake used to smell horrible, but not anymore. There are several large parks on the lake that provide views and places for people to play and exercise. My aunt and uncle even renewed their vows there. A lot of hard work has gone into cleaning up and reviving the lake. There are paved trails and walkways on both east and west shores of the 4.6 square mile lake. It is slowly healing and becoming nicer. I hope cleanup continues and more people start practicing leave no trace and respect the wildlife. I am so glad that the bald eagles are no longer endangered, and hope that the next generation of people learn from the mistakes of previous generations. That's one of yours, huh, hon?
Yep. 'Cause it does.
What's he doing?
He's flying right at me.
And he's happy to see you. Cool. I'll pick a bunch out to add for the grand finale. I hope you've enjoyed this video.
Like and subscribe.
And be sure to hit the notification bell for future videos. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.